Hey everyone, I'm Armor Gaming. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to Monster Analysis. Up for analysis today is Baltasar. Baltasar was abandoned as a baby. He grew up alone in the underworld, surrounded by criminals, and soon he became familiar with blades. It wasn't long before he learned that in his community there were only two options, to kill or to be killed. He chose the former. So in terms of design, this monster is by far one of the best monsters. Just look at that design, it is absolutely incredible. Now unfortunately, Social Point has had a history of making monsters that look absolutely amazing, be not so great in terms of skills and stats. So let's see if this applies to this monster. I should also mention that as of the time recording this video, there are 32 other Dark Legendary monsters, so I'm going to be comparing Baltasar with the rest of these monsters. Starting things off with power, this monster boasts an impressive 3,575 power, which makes him the strongest Dark Legendary monster in the whole entire game. Previous to this monster being released, General Nisha and Nox the Condemned used to have the highest power of 3,542. So even though it's just a few points difference, this does make Baltasar the strongest Dark Legendary monster. As for his life of 25,635, this actually puts him in 24th place. So he's not really that tanky. And as for his speed of 3,432, that actually puts him in 16th place. So don't get me wrong, his speed isn't terrible by any means, but when compared to other Dark Legendary monsters, they just outspeed him. But I do have to mention one thing about this monster. This monster was released in team races, so most people that have this monster will either have him ranked 1, ranked 2, or ranked 3. So if he's ranked 1, these will be his new stats, and if he's ranked 2, these are going to be his stats. And for those that were fortunate enough to get him in rank 3, these would be his stats. So as you can see, it's a major difference. Anyways, moving things along, his trait is immune to possession, which is an incredibly good trait to have for dark monsters. It also makes him usable in team wars involving magic monsters. Now going back to dark monsters, he still has to worry about Krampus who can freeze, or about those dark monsters that also have stun skills, but at least he's immune to possession, so this is incredibly good. And thus we move on to skills, and I'm gonna apologize ahead of time, a lot of these skills appear to be Italian, and I'm not that very good at pronouncing Italian names, I'm probably gonna butcher them. And thus we begin with the default skills, Bon Colop and Attacco Sorpresa, nothing interesting here. His ultimate attack, however, Vendetta Fraterna, deals massive dark damage to all enemies, may make all targets bleed, and apply stamina leak to them. This skill attacks multiple enemies, dealing 70 damage. It gives bleeding and stamina leak. Now this ultimate attack is pretty straightforward. It deals 70 damage. Combined with this monster's amazing power and combined with some strength runes, it's going to be enough to one hit all of the enemy team. However, it is dark based, so it might not be able to one hit the enemy dark monster. But I guess that could depend completely on whether or not you have this monster ranked up, whether the enemy monsters are ranked or not, and it also depends on the kind of runes you have on this monster. Do you have level 5 runes or do you have level 10 runes? Nonetheless, it is a really powerful attack, and even if the enemy monsters live, you're going to give them bleeding, so they're going to lose 10% of their health for the following 4 turns, and their power is reduced by 90%. And on top of that, you're also going to apply stamina leak, so they're going to be losing 15% of their stamina for the next 3 turns. So all in all, it's pretty much just your basic ultimate attack for attackers. It would have been really nice if this was a special base attack, but nonetheless, it's dark and it is what it is. So moving on to skills group 1, we have Assalto Arresto, Terrificante, and Impento Forte. Nothing too interesting here, so we're going to move on to skills group 2. Deals moderate dark damage, 50% chance of blinding target and making it bleed. This targets a single enemy, dealing 40 damage, costs 27 stamina with no cooldown, a 50% chance to bleed and to blind. In my opinion, that's not a really good skill. This skill is not even worth running. And moving on over to the right, Sanguinosa something deals low dark damage to all enemies, may make all targets bleed, 50% chance of giving nightmares to all targets, requires cooldown. So here we have an AoE skill that deals 25 damage, it costs 35 stamina, and it has a 2-turn cooldown. Now the cool thing about this skill is that the bleeding is actually 100%, and then there's that 50% chance to give nightmares. Now there are quite a couple of dark monsters that are immune to nightmares, but the fact that it gives bleeding and no monster in the game is immune to bleeding, that's great. So you have your basic AoE bleeding skill. Unfortunately, 25 damage, it's not that strong. The cooldown, it's pretty low, but the cost 35 stamina, that seems a little high to me. But all in all, I would probably have to say that this is one of the better skills that this monster has, so I would actually recommend running this skill. And the final skill in skills group 2 is Attacco Notturno. Deals moderate special damage, may give nightmares to target. This skill targets a single enemy, it deals 45 damage, it costs 28 stamina, and it has no cooldown. And this skill also gives nightmares to the enemy target. Now the thing about this skill is that it is special based and it does have no cooldown, so it's spammable. However, 45 damage is very little. And normally what you look for in an attacker is for an attacker to have really strong powerful skills, you know, like 60 damage, 65, 70. 60 and above is really what we're after. We don't really want a 45 damage skill that also gives some sort of DOT. Attackers are normally supposed to one hit the enemy monster. And even with that being said, you may or may not want to run this skill, because honestly, moving on to skills group 3, he doesn't have anything too interesting. So in skills group 3 we have this skill over here that deals heavy dark damage, may blind target, requires cooldown. So 50 damage, 28 stamina, 2-turn cooldown. and it gives blind. As far as skills are concerned, a 2-turn cooldown for a skill that gives 50 damage is not a good skill in my opinion. Yes, this may give blind, but once again, this monster is an attacker. The point of attackers are to eliminate the enemy monster. There's really no need to apply effects, to apply DLTs. So once again, all in all, I'm forced to say this is a skill worth running. It's actually not a very good skill, but given this monster's other skills, it's probably one of his best skills because it does blind. So in case you fail to eliminate the enemy monster, it's great that they're blinded, they might not hit you. But once again, attackers, they kind of want to eliminate the enemy monsters and not let them live. And moving on to another AoE, Segreto Mortale, deals moderate dark damage to all enemies, may give nightmares to all targets, 50% chance of making targets bleed, requires cooldown. So this skill is like the reverse of skills group 2. This skill is actually a bit stronger, it deals 30 damage instead of 25, the stamina cost is also a little bit higher, it's 37 instead of 35, the cooldowns is 4 instead of 2, so that's a lot higher, and instead of doing a guaranteed bleed, it does a guaranteed nightmares, which in my opinion, bleed is way better than nightmares. So I'd probably have to say that the skills group 2 version is way better because it gives that guaranteed bleeding. But once again, to what I was saying earlier, attackers are meant to eliminate the enemy monster, not really to apply DLT or effects. So once again, you may or may not want to run this skill, it really depends on you. You could always just decide to run both AoEs and then just use them one after another, and hopefully those 2 skills is enough to eliminate all of the enemy monsters. They are kind of weak, 25 and 30, even given this monster's immense power and some strength runes. I don't know, you'd have to do some math to figure out whether or not you can actually eliminate the enemy monsters just using these 2 AoEs. But anyways, moving on to the final skill, Furia di Assassino. I'm pretty sure it means Fury of the Assassin or something. Deals heavy special damage, may make targets bleed, requires cooldown. This skill targets a single enemy, it deals 50 damage, costs 28 stamina, it has a 2-turn cooldown, and it gives a guaranteed bleeding. Once again, exact same situation. 50 damage for 2-turn cooldown, that is way too high for me. The cooldown does not justify the damage. Yeah, it gives bleeding, but again, it's an attacker. He's supposed to eliminate the enemy monster in one hit or eliminate the whole team with an AoE. So anyways, all in all, just based on the skills of this monster, I'd have to say he's actually not that great of a monster. Yeah, it's great that he's in team races and many of us will get him ranked up, but even as a ranked up monster, I'd have to say there are significantly better monsters. There's attackers that can also AoE stun, there's attackers that have possession skills, there's attackers that can do like 65 damage special base, whereas the best this monster can do is a 50 damage special based attack that gives bleeding. And unfortunately, once again, Social Point does not disappoint, making a monster that looks really darn amazing in terms of design, but skills wise, it is just absolutely sad. But anyway, since this is an analysis, the best skill set for this monster would be any combination of skills group 2 and 3, not including this skill right here, the 50% chance to blind and bleed. Sorry, I can't pronounce all of the names, I don't really want to struggle pronouncing all the names, but if you just exclude this skill right here that's highlighted, you can pretty much just use any combination of these 5 skills and you're gonna have a pretty, I guess, decent monster, a decent skill set. Of the remaining 5 skills, I'd have to say that the 2 skills I would highly recommend would be the AoE bleeding skill, the guaranteed bleeding, and this 50 damage blind skill. And those are the 2 skills I really recommend. As for the other 2s, it really depends up to you. Do you want to run the other AoE skill even though it's 50% chance of nightmares? The 30 damage is what I don't like. Once again, I'm repeating myself so much, but he's an attacker, so giving him a 30 damage AoE, that's not really that great. So it kind of sucks. It's like you're going after DOTs, even though he's not really meant to be a DOT person, he's meant to be an attacker. So it kind of sucks when we get a monster with high power, but doesn't have the skills to back it up. But anyways, once again, I really recommend the blind skill and the AoE bleeding skill. Oh, and another thing, if you're deciding between the special base skills, you have the option of choosing this 45 damage no cooldown skill that gives nightmares, or this option of choosing the 50 damage skill with the 2-turn cooldown that gives bleeding. Personally, I think I'd have to say that the 0 cooldown skill is better because you can just use it twice back to back and you'd eliminate the enemy dark monster, whereas with this skill, if you were to use it, then you'd have to wait 2 turns before being able to use it again. So I don't know, it's really up to you. You can choose to run both of these skills and omit this AoE nightmares, or you can choose to run both AoEs and omit this Fury of the Assassin, so just go with the 0 cooldown skill. And as far as runes, to go with your typical attacker rune setup, 2 strength runes and a speed rune. And yeah, that is pretty much going to conclude the analysis on this monster. Once again, he has an amazing design, he has pretty amazing stats, especially if you get him ranked up, but his skills really don't do him justice, and unfortunately, he's overall not that great of a monster. If you disagree with me though, and you want to defend this monster and tell me why he's good, please let me know in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear your guys' opinion. And with that being said, that is going to conclude this video. Please be sure to let me know who you want to see analyzed next, and like always, remember to dream big and pursue your passions.